Good evening. This is Maestro with the Dawn of War 2 Retribution Elite Modcast. Today we have a 1v1 on Jarilo's Forge, and our first player is going to be Rostam, playing as the Force Commander. Dark Angels, got toothbrushes on his helmet. This is a tanky melee hero with the ability to buff and disrupt with Battlecry. His opponent is going to be Finale, playing as the Lictor Alpha, this infiltrating melee assassin commander with displacement. Now, our matchup here between these two players, these are two pretty solid players. I wouldn't say that they are top tier, like a best noob kind of thing, or dark hero, but they're definitely solid players. I guess you could probably use the term high level. There might be some people in the community who might dispute that, but I would not say that these are just average players. I think they're pretty good. And our matchup here in terms of the races, well, the Lictor Alpha, he is definitely a pretty oppressive hero in many ways. He is one of the few infiltrating commanders. And between the other infiltrating commander, the Commander Knob, the Lictor Alpha, you could make an argument that he is in some ways more threatening since he is a melee unit. Melee units generally just by default do a little bit more damage than ranged units. However, this Lictor Alpha, overstaying his welcome just a little bit. A lot of focus on the Lictor Alpha from Rostam. However, as a result, Finale was focusing a little bit more on map control. He has taken 2 victory points, so he will start ticking victory points down in his favor. And now, of course, with that engagement win, and Rostam does want to see what he can make of that, so he is spreading out some of his units to certainly get some of the resource points. He'll try to get a double cap. Doesn't go for the generator bash, I think possibly realizing just that he's, a little bit behind in terms of victory points. Already 50 tick down in Finale's favor. We are seeing some more purchases, as we do see the Warrior Brood out for Finale. Now, Finale, he didn't go for any upgrades on any of his units, so he was able to get that tier 1.5 squad out faster than Rostam, who, on the other hand, has purchased a shotgun. That shotgun providing some defense against both the Hormagaunts as well as the Lictor Alpha himself. Eventually, we should, of course, see a Sergeant upgraded on one of these scout squads, possibly even both of them. Now, if you've been following some of the recent casts, you do know that to some extent that is a risk, getting the Sergeants on the scout squads, because those Sergeants are a die-last model, and that Flesh Hook from the Lictor Alpha can pull them in, and if there's enough follow-up from the Hormagaunts, you can actually wipe out the entire squad that way. But at the same time, if you don't get the Sergeant on the scout squads, then you can't detect the Lictor Alpha. Then you're completely at the mercy of his invisibility, which is not a good situation either. And this has pretty much always been one of the really oppressive strengths of the Lictor Alpha. And that's not to say that, that he's just the best commander in the game. There's certainly weaknesses that he has, but there are definitely certain very oppressive features about him. Now, the Warrior's buying a lot of space right here, as Rostam is spending so much time just trying to force off these Warriors that it actually bought so much time for the Hormagaunts and the Termagants to bash this generator farm. The entire farm is gone. Rostam was trying to return the favor on this side. Looks like he did actually take down 2 generators, as both of these generators are replacement generators, as we can see by the fact that they are rebuilding. But definitely this is still a win for Finale. He's still got the map control. He's still got the victory point lead. Rostam doesn't have too much, mostly only natural power points or resource points for him. And the victory points are in a triple cap, and soon at this point to be over 100 victory points against him. And on the one hand, we could say that this is kind of an expected trajectory of this matchup, in part because Tyranids are known for kind of having a stronger tier 1, having better map control in tier 1. Part of it also does have to do with the fact that the tier 1.5 unit for Finale came out so much earlier. But, of course, Assault Marines are quite expensive with that 450 requisition and 45 power. The Warriors, although we can't see their exact cost right now, definitely not quite as expensive as that. Also, given the fact that the cheaper alternative for Space Marines in terms of tier 1.5 unit. The Devastator Marine is something that would be pretty hard countered by the Lictor Alpha. Meanwhile, we are going to see the Toxin Sacks upgraded on our Termagant squads or Broods. So that's why those Tactical Marines were, they were snared right there. That Crippling Poison ability that comes from the Toxin Sacks. It is a 90% slow, so it's very close to just being completely immobilized. Of course, those ranged units can still fire just fine. But at the same time, even against ranged units, it can just put them in such a compromising position. Assault Marines looking to finish off the Lictor Alpha. I don't know if they have what it takes to finish him off here, but they're going to go for it. Oh, For the Emperor has been put on them. I think they do, and indeed they do. Okay, that is a nice win for Rostam, finding that kill on the Lictor Alpha. And yeah, that's not insignificant. Meanwhile, the Shotgun Scouts put in the garrison. Basically means that the Hormagaunts as well as the Termagants pretty much can't do anything. In fact, Finale, yeah, he has nothing that can answer a garrison, and this is a fairly... I mean, there are a few garrisons on this map, but not that many. Here's one, here's two. I don't think there are any others. But even so, if you are up against Tyranids, it is nevertheless a strategy to try to take advantage of the garrisons when you can. Especially since, as I said, Finale literally has nothing to deal with garrisons. He doesn't have a Swarm Mine squad built. I mean, normally you won't get Swarm Mines unless you have a real intention behind it. Sometimes it's just early game pressure. Other times it is specifically just to deal with garrisons. And we don't see a Barb Strangler on the Warrior. Now, chances are, if he doesn't have a Barb Strangler on the Warrior, he really just wants to get the value out of that leap into combat instead of trying to keep the Warriors in ranged, even though these days you can upgrade to a Barb Strangler and then later switch to the melee glands, the adrenal glands later on. So Tactical Marines trying to get some solo bashing done, but unfortunately with the Lictor Alpha here, there's just not a whole lot they can do with that, which is just a big part of the Lictor Alpha's oppressiveness, again, has to do with that. A lot of times against a lot of squads, especially Tier 1 or Tier 2 squads, there are a lot of cases in which he will just, if he ties up that squad in melee, it's usually a pretty big loss. Any ranged squad, it's absolutely a given. And right now, that Lictor Alpha also does have the Feeder Tendrils, but he's been wiped again, so I can't even show you the description of the Feeder Tendrils. But the Feeder Tendrils are a warrior that, aside from doing power melee damage, they also return health to the Lictor Alpha with each attack. So it's an attempt to make the Lictor Alpha a little bit tankier, but he doesn't really have a great baseline health pool. And we're actually seeing for much of this game has kind of favored Finale so far. The first kind of loss in his direction was the first time the Lictor Alpha got wiped, and the second one was when the second time the Lictor Alpha got incapacitated. That will also be converted into a Generator Bash, so this is a pretty good position for Rostam to try to start coming back into this game. Unfortunately for him, he's actually got no power himself, so it's a nice Generator Bash, but it's still not exactly equal, and Finale definitely still has the advantage. He still has the victory points. He's still beating Rostam to Tier 2. Rostam also with such a huge requisition float. Unfortunately, that is a little bit of an error on his part with this much of a requisition float, and as much of an advantage that he's pushing right here. There absolutely should have been generators drop, but he doesn't actually control it. So that's why he didn't drop them. Oh man, I think a scout squad probably needed to be moved there a little bit sooner. So yeah, that's unfortunately pretty rough for Rostam. I mean, now he's at the point where he's got over 1,000 requisition. Like at this point, I think once this finally gets captured, I think he needs to drop the node immediately. Drop the... Oh no, the Force Commander might go down though. Commander's going down a little bit unexpectedly, indeed it is. This is, strangely enough, there were 2 times when I said, basically each time Finale had lost the Lictor Alpha, that was a good win for Finale. Surprisingly, Rostam losing the Force Commander is not a big deal here. We're still early on in the game, so it won't take long for that cost of the Force Commander to go down to 250 requisition. And Rostam already has a huge stockpile of requisition. Even the need to go to tier 2 when that finally happens won't even drain much of that. So yeah, he kind of does... Wow, where did all his requisition go? Trying to figure it out. I mean, he bought back the Force Commander. He must have gotten, like, I don't know. Like, he had 1,000. Shouldn't have cost that much to revive the Force Commander unless he really bought it when it was still not down to 250. Hasn't even gone to tier 2 yet. Now, in many other matchups, being this far behind in your race to get to tier 2 would often spell game. You would see a vehicle coming out from your opponent, and then you would just have no way to answer it. And then you would just basically just lose the game as the vehicle would push forward to your power, lock you out of power. But Tyranids are somewhat unique in that they technically don't have a tier 2 vehicle. So we see the Tyrant Guard coming out, which is basically the equivalent of a tier 2 vehicle for Tyranids. But one of the fatal flaws in comparison to the tier 2 vehicles of other races is that it does not have vehicle armor. And that is significant because that by itself means that it's much, much more fightable than just about any other actual tier 2 vehicle. So the big difference there is that the tier 1 piercing weapons for many units against vehicle armor, they're basically useless. Basically useless. Against the super heavy infantry armor of the Tyrant Guard, they're not especially effective, but they're at least better than useless. The penalty for piercing weapons against super heavy infantry armor, I believe, is about 70%. And that might seem like a pretty bad penalty, and it is. But vehicle armor's penalty for piercing weapons, I think, is literally higher than 99%. We'll have to check that one a little bit later. But the point stands, even if my numbers may not be exactly correct, but I'm pretty sure they're pretty close. That being said, in all this time, Rostam has managed to turn the victory points around quite a bit in his favor. He's still... Okay, double cap is now not in his hands anymore. Scouts will get the cap up top. Meanwhile, it does look like a tac drop pod is called in, and Rostam is no longer floating requisition quite as much as he once was. The tac drop pod is an interesting one. Here's the argument I want to make for the tac drop pod. Now, of course, getting attacked through a drop pod is cheaper than getting it from base. You get it out on the field, and it's been called in fairly close to the Tyrant Guard. We're seeing the plasma gun upgraded on the squad that was dropped in, and the plasma gun is a pretty powerful counter to the Tyrant Guard. Although I don't know why they're going so far away. Why are they going home? What are they doing here? Why are they going away from the Tyrant Guard? That's the main thing they want to fight. Man, scouts nearly get wiped right here. So I'm not entirely sure about the positioning of... Oh, I don't know. My best guess there is he wanted to keep the aggro away from the Plasma Tac Squad, because that's the primary source of damage against the Tyrant Guard. And I guess he either didn't want to give up the Flamer Tac, since the Flamer Tac would still be very, very useful against the Termagants. But then he gets both of them charged down by the Tyrant Guard using its ability. Now, Assault Marines here have been upgraded with Thunder and Lightning, so I feel like we should see a Melt-A-Bomb soon. No, they're going to go for a jump, and unfortunately it's going to miss. I think the whole intention of that jump was to disrupt the Lictor Alpha, and unfortunately it was a complete failure. I do think it would have been better to use that energy for a Melt-A-Bomb on the Tyrant Guard. Unless I'm just completely potatoing here, and the Melt-A-Bomb was already used and I just didn't catch it. Unfortunately, that does mean it's actually a lost engagement for Rostam, and he does bleed a few more models. Victory points once again going in favor of Finale. So Finale, at least right now, certainly doing well in Tier 2. Maintaining the lead. Had a lead in Tier 1. At the moment, keeping it in Tier 2. But the gap has been closed a bit, but this is the Forest Commander going down! Stayed in just far too long against that Tyrant Guard. Alright, now of course we have the issue that the Tyrant Guard is in shield wall. Oh no! Rostam actually went for double plasma. I don't know. Maybe... I mean, the thing about the double plasma is that when the Tyrant Guard is not in shield wall, it will just melt. It will just melt. So the argument for that is that the Tyrant Guard is just going to have so much trouble getting any value because you're just going to burn it down so quickly. But part of me felt like saying, what about a missile launcher on one so that you can put a little bit more threat on the Tyrant Guard when it is in shield wall? In that case, though, I would also want to check the health regeneration rate of the Tyrant Guard when it's in shield wall and try to compare that to the DPS of the missile tack, which, to be fair, I do know the DPS of the missile tack. It's 17 and change, basically 17 and a decimal. So that is a little bit on the low side, and it is quite possible that a missile tack might not really make any appreciable progress. At any rate, it's another one engagement for Finale. The Tyrant Guard doing quite well. And I think part of that is we aren't really seeing... we're seeing a little bit of screen jittering. I don't feel that we've seen the plasma attacks as well as the assault marines really close enough. And I think the reason that what I'm getting at here is that Melt-A-Bomb is basically what's going to keep the Tyrant Guard in check, prevent it from being able to charge in and just basically just tie up the tactical marines. And of course, another thing for Rostam is that in a lot of cases the tactical marines have been bunched up together. That means they're getting disrupted together when the Tyrant Guard charges in. Ideally, those tactical marines need to be split apart a little bit more so that if only one of them gets tied up, then you just have a kiting situation and you have one tac squad just try to, the one that has been aggroed by the Lictor Alpha, just not the Lictor Alpha, the Tyrant Guard, just try to move away while the other one focuses on. All right, Force Commander is here, down to half his health, but so is the Lictor Alpha. Which one will go down first? A nice assault leap from the Lictor Alpha, except for the fact that he didn't have enough health going into it, so he goes down yet again. So things going well for Rostam in that engagement. So this is, I mean, this has been a very even match. Definitely Finale with an early game advantage, but, you know, we could in part chalk that up to Tyranids having the early game advantage. Finale looks like he's on the verge of losing some squads right here as the Assault Marines buffed by For the Emperor doing quite a bit of work. For the Emperor is a global ability for the Force Commander, just increases the damage of a targeted squad. So it is definitely useful against, on Assault Marines. Also useful on Devastators with a las cannon, if that was something we would see here, but we of course don't. So Tyrant Guard needs to go into shield wall because it's just getting melted by the damage of the double plasma attacks, and one of those plasma attacks is level 4. That's a squad that's going to do a huge amount of damage. There is one thing actually that, now that I'm thinking about it, before I said, no, but what about a missile launcher? And the more I look at it, I don't actually like the idea of a missile launcher anymore, but what I feel is the real missed opportunity, and what I actually really feel quite strongly about, and I don't have any doubt about, is that I think that the second tac squad should have just been a Stern Guard veteran squad. I mean, it was a fresh tac squad. As it turns out, there was actually some discussion about the damage numbers. Stern Guard veterans actually do more damage with vengeance rounds to super heavy infantry than a plasma tac squad. So I think a little bit of a missed opportunity now, and he's already gotten a level on that tac squad, which makes it a little bit more undesirable. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of just an optimization thing, but he should have gone for Stern Guard veterans instead. Oh well. At any rate, we have both of our players getting into Tier 3. Finale already has been there. He will be getting a Tier 2 unit out first. Sorry, Tier 3 unit. Now, Tier 3 for Tyranids. Tier 3 for Tyranids. You're looking at... all of the Tier 3 options are actually quite powerful. We have the most common one you definitely see is the Carnifex, and with pretty good reason. Swarm Lord, of course, is an option, and then sometimes less used, definitely less used, but can actually be quite threatening, is a Tier 3 Lictor. Tier 3 Lictor, I think, would actually be very, very powerful against what Rostam has right now, but probably not the most powerful. Any of them would be good. And typically what you instead see is the train of Carnifexes. The Carnifex, it actually has vehicle armor, and that's a big part of why it is one of the go-to choices. Of course, the Swarmlord has vehicle armor, but the Swarmlord being more expensive does, of course, mean that it's going to take longer for it to get out on the field. as well as longer to build. Terminator Force Commander tried to finish off the Warriors, but couldn't get a melee swing in there, so we see the Terminator Force Commander. And, you know, now that I think about it, I don't recall any upgrades on the Force Commander, so that might have been something that he was going for all along. And I think it does make sense. The Terminator Force Commander is something that you don't necessarily see all the time. There are definitely trade-offs both ways between whether you choose to get the Terminator Force Commander or not. So this Terminator Force Commander, first of all, you give up the Force Commander's levels. So if you have a Force Commander that has gotten a lot of levels, then going for the Terminator Force Commander often isn't ideal. But I think the Terminator Force Commander offers a lot in this matchup because he has, depending on his weapon choice, he can either have very good single target damage. Oh, he's going for melee instead. So that is something that will actually very hard counter everything on Finale's side that's not a Carnifex or a Swarmlord. And right now, Finale doesn't have a Carnifex or a Swarmlord. So certainly the Tyrant card, it'll actually really rip it apart. So 95 power melee damage. So Tyrant Guard now under quite a bit of threat. Eventually, I think it's just going to have to go into Shield Wall. I don't know if this is a great Tyranno formation. Let's see what it gets. I mean, it's probably going to knock over the Scouts at some point. No. It was... Okay, they actually just get away in time. But it's also a lot of retreats from Rostam. Force Commander, though, is still in here. And truth be told, okay, this is the biggest counter to the Force Commander, though. Well, not so much in terms of damage, but that Crippling Poison, as we saw it used on that Force Commander, it does work on him. Supposed to snare for 4 seconds, I believe. That didn't feel very long at all to me, though. And I guess in Dawn of War 2 time, it's not like a MOBA where 4 seconds would be an actual eternity. Anyway, Terminator Force Commander, of course, here, he would absolutely rip apart the Lictor Alpha. Even with those feeder tendrils, Lictor Alpha would not stand a chance against the Terminator Force Commander. Oh, Terminator Force Commander even get a nice special attack on the Lictor Alpha. Lictor Alpha realizes that he needs a new target, so he will use his Assault Fleet to get in on the Tax. Do the Shotgun Scouts have a Shotgun Blast, though? Doesn't look like it, so Tax will just be retreating. Terminator Force Commander is still here, though. Though, as we see, the Termagants are pretty good at just kind of running away from him and kiting him, especially if they have Toxin Sacks ready. So Terminator Force Commander realizes that not going to happen, tries to go for finishing off the Lictor Alpha, but doesn't succeed in getting it. Terminator Force Commander trying to go in. And even though he only has a fraction of his health, I mean, he's got still about 600 left, which is almost the entire health pool of the Lictor Alpha, so he's... Certainly his health pool increases quite a bit when he does get this Terminator armor, and things are looking pretty good for Rostam now. He's turning it around a lot in this late game. Oh, no! I just realized a big part of also kind of the misplay on Finale's side, which is a massive float and an overly long delay to getting a Tier 3 unit, especially making it a Swarmlord at this point in time. I mean, if he's got... I mean, the Swarmlord is through much of its build time, but I don't think he had... Like, I think the Swarmlord was a little late to be purchased, and I mean, now, like, Finale has so few victory points, he's got to act really fast. At the very least, he did win that engagement, so we should... Like, he needs to put the Lictor Alpha on this point now where he literally loses the game. There's some margin for error here, but it's not that big. All right, I think Finale also... He needs to start like a Carnifex right behind that, because he's at the point where he has so little room for error. He's down to 9 victory points. Predator is now out. Yeah, he starts the Carnifex. And that Carnifex, I think, needs to be a Venom Cannon Carnifex to put enough threat on this Lictor Alpha. He's going to give up the Warriors. That might have even been intentional. I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, he might have actually given up the population there so that he could call in something else. To call in a Venom Brood. Right, that makes a huge amount of sense. Unfortunately, they're called so close to the Terminator Force Commander with Lightning Claws, not Thunderhammers, that it's... I mean, he does take the Predator down to half health, so this is actually a pretty good play by Finale to intentionally suicide the Warriors to get the Venom Brood call-in, something that is, I believe, unique to the Lictor Alpha now. Unfortunately, the Venom Brood, there's just so much threat from the Terminator Force Commander. The Swarm Lord really needs to try to do its best to put the threat on the Terminator Force Commander. The Swarm Lord now itself potentially in trouble. However, Finale was able to convert that engagement into a triple cap. However, I'm not sure how much longer he holds it. Where the Carnifex? What happened to the Carnifex? Did he cancel it because he needed the resource to get the Venom Brood? Maybe, I guess maybe that was it. Like, I don't know if I just missed it and maybe he... I think that was it. I think he felt he wanted to take advantage of that opportunity. Oh no, the Swarm Lord. Swarm Lord. Oh no, the Predator not targeting. It only needs one hit. That's a dead Swarm Lord. And even if this Predator dies, which it actually isn't, even if the Predator died, that would have been a worthwhile trade. Rostam trying to come out on the field. I think he actually has enough time. I think the Tax need to like, okay. I thought the Lictor Alpha might go for like the assault leap on the scouts, which could have knocked them over, and I felt like the Tax kind of need to double up on it, but it turns out they don't. The Lictor Alpha will go down, and that will be Rostam reclaiming the double cap, and with that double cap, I think he does take the game. Yes, that's definitely the case, as there are... Yeah, Finale just doesn't have enough in army. He can't fight the Terminator Force Commander or the Predator that much anymore. And that will be it. I hope you enjoyed it, and have a good night.